yes, we got the freedom, but now more and more we are looking towards the West. But I would make comparison to your rule, which says that it's rule number 4: compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. So we should compare ourselves with ourselves.
Yes.
And actually we have made a great success throughout last 30 years.
Right.
And we should, it's my personal opinion, my humble opinion, we should not always listen to some advisors who say that you have to do this, you have to do that from West.
Yeah, well, advice is easy to give and doesn't cost the person who's giving the advice much.
Socially correct advice is
well, there's that too, yeah. It doesn't cost the person who's giving the advice much if the advice fails. And if the advice succeeds, then the person giving advice can take credit for it. And so you might say that's a paradoxical thing for someone who's written books of rules and advice, let's say, to say, but I don't really think my books are advice. They're investigations into ethical guidelines, and they're mutual in some sense, meaning that the reader is investigating with me. I'm not insisting on a pathway. I'm saying, well, here's a proposition, something that you can use to frame your perceptions and your actions. Here's how it might be understood. If you find that it would be useful, then adopt it, and if not, well, then there's many other things that you might do. You mentioned earlier the idea of, let me see, the first part of your question was?
We were talking about Estonian liberation from Soviet oppression. And then that sometimes we have advisors.
Yeah, to compare yourself to who you were. The problem with comparing yourself to other people, people tend to do that a lot when they're teenagers. And they need to do that to some degree because they're trying to calibrate who they are, and they're also trying to fit into the social group. And they need to do that. That's why it's so important for teenagers what other people think of them. You don't want a teenager who doesn't care what other people think of them. That's not good. Now that can go too far, right? You can care only what other people think.
Another extreme.
Yes, exactly. But the problem with comparing yourself to other people, there's a bunch of them. One is envy is not helpful. And it's also a form of delusion, you know. I know enough about people, particularly from my clinical work, to know that, no, you can see the shiny outside of someone, and maybe they're wealthy and they have material possessions that you don't have, but you have no idea about the particularities of their life and what they might be suffering from or why they might be suffering from it. And so you look at the outside and you see, you know, someone in a Maserati, red Maserati with a hot blonde in the passenger seat. You think, man, he's got it all. And you don't know that she's like a high-priced hooker with a meth habit whose father abused her, and he's like racked with guilt constantly and in a sweat because his crooked business dealings are about to fall down on his head. And so that kind of envy, it's a surface delusion. The only person that you really can compare yourself in some real sense is you, because you're the only one, your previous instantiation is the only person who matches your talents and your limitations perfectly, and you can strive to be somewhat better than you were, and you can attain that too. That's the other thing that's so good about it, is that certainly, even if you're not very disciplined, you can be 1% better than you are in 2 months. And that's 6% better in a year, which is quite a lot, especially because it compounds. And in 5 years, with compounding, you're way better than you were. And that's a good thing to know, especially that it can also be done incrementally. And it's so that, see, it removes envy, because you're not envious of who you were yesterday, unless a catastrophe has beset you. It removes envy. But it also sets you in a position where you can reward yourself for genuine, small-scale, implementable undertakings, because you can say, well, no, I set out to improve myself in this manner, and I've made this much progress, and hooray for me. And that observation of progress towards a desired goal, that's the core of positive emotion. So happiness, the happiness that people claim to want, is to be found in the observation of progress towards a valid goal. We know that neurophysiologically, we know it psychopharmacologically. That's what positive emotion is for. It's to, or the one profound form of positive emotion, it's to signify that you are moving properly towards a properly valued goal. And that brings up another issue, which is in my writings constantly, that you need a high goal. And the highest goals, whether people like it or not, the highest goals are religious, by definition. Because the highest things are, by definition, religious.
Which are beyond of us personally.
Well, the higher they are, the more beyond.
Wider group.
Yeah, well, they unite people.
Or the meaning of existence.
Yes, all of those things.
Martin Seligman, American psychologist, has said that it's very important to live a meaningful life.
Right, well, meaning is to be found in relationship to the highest goals, technically speaking. So what should you do with your life if you want to have a meaningful life? The answer is, well, you should pursue the highest possible goal, because that's where the meaning is. I mean, and I don't mean this metaphysically. I mean, that's how your brain is set up. If you're pursuing a trivial goal, just a short-term hedonic goal, there's almost no reward in moving towards it, because it doesn't integrate your existence across multiple levels of time and community simultaneously. And you know this in a very deep and instinctual way. And so if you're pursuing trivial goals, then the meaning that's produced will be trivial. And we also know that there's a difference between trivial and profound goals because we have the language. If I say trivial goal or profound goal, you know instantly, at least to some degree, what I'm referring to. It's not like it's a mystery. And so we have an intrinsic...
It needs experience to understand terms.
Well, we know this. It's like the difference between reading a shallow throwaway book just for entertainment and reading something profound, something by Dostoevsky, let's say, or by some great literary figure. The deeper books move you in a more profound way. And so we have this instinct for profundity, and you want to pursue what's in the most profound depths. And the farther down you go into the depths of profundity, the more you encroach upon the religious domain. I also mean that technically.
To me, it all sounds very logical. And it's even, I'm sorry to say, even simple. Kind of. It's from the basics of the life.
But it's simple once you figure it out.